Moonlight silvered the altar stones the night Evangeline Nightshade was supposed to become a wife. Instead, she became a story. She still remembered the damp bite of mist against her bare shoulders, the weight of her wedding cloak, the scent of cedar smoke, and wild roses crushed under dancing feet. The whole pack had gathered in a ring, wolves in skin and fur, elders chanting old vows as the full moon rose fat and white over the border pines. Her fated mate stood across from her in formal black, a handspan taller. Handsome in the way carved marble was handsome, hard, cold, admired from a distance. He had kissed her knuckles in private an hour before and whispered, "You'll do your duty." At the altar, he looked at her as though duty had soured in his mouth. "Speak your vow," the elder commanded. Evangeline opened her lips, heart pounding with equal parts fear and hope. "I vow blood, bone, and I reject this bond." The words cracked through the clearing so sharply the chanting died mid-breath. She blinked. "What?" Her mate turned to the gathered pack instead of facing her. "You all know why. I will not chain my line to an empty womb in a pretty dress." Laughter broke out in pockets, sharp, shocked, then hungry. Evangeline's fingers went numb around her bouquet. "You can't know that. We haven't even—" "I know enough." He dropped her hand like it had burned him. "I won't waste my seed on barrenness." Her mother gasped. Her father stared at the ground. No one stepped forward. From the front row, Astrid Blackwood tilted her dark head and sighed with theatrical pity. How tragic. Poor Evangeline. Beautiful, yes. But beauty doesn't birth heirs. Someone behind Evangeline hissed, "Should have tested her blood first." Another voice, older and bitter. "A cursed womb poisons a whole pack." The elder tried to restore order, but the ritual had already rotted. The rejection should have required 3 moons of inquiry, healers, witnesses. Instead, it became a public feast on humiliation. Hands seized her elbows, her veil tore, silver bells from her hair ornaments scattered over stone like tiny bones. She searched faces in panic, expecting someone, anyone, to object to the law being trampled. No one did. By dawn they had dragged her past the border stones and thrown her cloak after her into the mud. "Don't come back," her former mate called from the ridge, voice carrying through pines bright with frost. "Find some hedge witch to fix what the moon broke." Astrid's laugh followed, low and satisfied. "Or spare us and disappear." 7 years later, the words still lived under Evangeline's skin like splinters. By the time famine hit the outer villages, Barren Evangeline was less a name than a cautionary tale. Mothers used it when daughters asked to choose love over alliance. Don't be foolish. Don't be needy. Don't end up like Barren Evangeline. She lived in the far settlement of Grey Hollow, where wind came down from the mountain teeth and gnawed through walls, where hungry wolves pretended pride when their paws shook from weakness. She had built a healer's shed from scavenged timber and stubbornness. She set broken wrists, brewed fever teas, stitched hunting gashes by candlelight. She asked for payment in grain when there was grain, in labor when there wasn't. The famine ate everything anyway. First came thin winter stores, then blight in the root fields. Then deer vanished from usual trails, driven by early storms. Children developed hollow cheeks and dusk coughs. Old wolves stopped shifting because it took too much energy to mend the bones back. Evangeline's own body had never truly recovered from that wedding night. They had restrained her with wolfsbane rope when she fought the border guards, a punishment for dishonoring ritual ground. Wolfsbane should have faded from blood in weeks. Whatever concentration had soaked that rope had left scars that flared with fire whenever she overexerted. Some nights pain lanced from hip to ribs, and she curled on her cot biting cloth to stay quiet while her wolf paced, frantic and muzzled inside her. Still, she kept working. She ground willow bark with fingers split from cold. She rationed poppy milk drop by drop. She walked hut to hut with medicine satchels gone light as guilt. At the communal fire pit, women accepted her tinctures, but not her eyes. "Thanks, healer," they'd mutter, then lower their voices for whispers they never meant to hide. "Don't let her touch your belly when your heat comes. Moon knows what's wrong with her blood. 7 years and not even a phantom pup." Evangeline learned to swallow rage like bitter tonic. Then little Mara Whitethorn, 6 winters old and all knees and stubborn braids, developed river lung fever. Evangeline sat by her pallet for 2 nights, spooning broth between chapped lips, cooling her skin with snowmelt cloths, listening to each breath turn more ragged. On the third morning, Mara's grandmother gripped Evangeline's wrist hard enough to bruise. "Where is the king's grain?" she demanded. "Where is the medicine tribute? They said we were due shipment before first frost." "We were," Evangeline said. "I sent petitions to the fortress twice. Maybe they'd answer if someone worthy asked." The old woman's gaze dropped, deliberate, to Evangeline's flat belly. Mara worsened that afternoon while wind shook the shutters, her breaths turning thin whistles that made everyone in the hut flinch. By dusk, the village square was full. Starved wolves were dangerous wolves, quicker to anger, slower to mercy. The village reeve stood on the well platform with 2 enforcers at his side and parchment in his fist, seal broken. "By order of court liaison Astrid Blackwood," he announced, voice loud with borrowed authority, "all unregistered healers will surrender stores for official distribution." Evangeline froze where she stood, medicine satchel strapped cross-body, fingers smelling of rosemary and blood. "That's not legal," she said. "Those stores are for current patients. You can't strip treatment mid-fever." The reeve gave her a smile like rotten milk. "You'll lecture us on law now? You who couldn't keep your own mate?" Laughter rippled. He nodded to the enforcers. They pushed past her into her shed. Shelves rattled, glass cracked. One emerged with her last sealed jar of antibiotic mold and held it overhead like a prize. Evangeline lunged on instinct. Pain detonated through her side as old wolfsbane scars ignited. She staggered and hit the dirt on one knee. "Careful," someone called from the crowd. "Barren witches bite." The reeve stepped down from the platform until his boots were inches from her face. "You want to be useful?" he said quietly. "Go to the Alpha King yourself. Beg. Trade whatever tricks you have. But if you stay here and keep hoarding, I'll bind you and leave you for the rogues beyond East Ridge." He leaned closer, breath sour with hunger. "And don't pretend this is about the village. We all know you want a way back into court." Evangeline looked up at him, shaking with pain and fury and helplessness so sharp she thought it might split her ribs. Behind him, Mara's father stood expressionless, fear turned to stone. Behind him, children watched with winter-blue lips and empty bowls. This wasn't about dignity anymore. It wasn't even about her. It was about whether anyone in Grey Hollow survived until spring. She rose slowly, every movement scraping fire along the scars at her waist. "Give me 2 days," she said. "I can travel faster alone. If I leave now, I can reach the fortress before moonset tomorrow." The reeve snorted. "And if they turn you away?" She swallowed. "Then you can decide whether rogues or snow takes me first." He tossed the mold jar at her chest. She barely caught it. "Go then, Barren healer. If you're not back with medicine in 5 days, don't come back at all." She left before dawn with a pack full of herbs, dried roots, 3 bandages, and a letter listing every sick villager by name. Snow squeaked beneath her boots. Pine sap and distant wood smoke cut the air. Hunger hollowed her steps by noon. Pain hollowed them further by dusk. The road to the Alpha King's territory climbed through knife-edged ridges and narrow defiles where wind screamed like hunted things. Evangeline shifted when she could to save time, gray she-wolf running lean through drifts, but each shift tore at her scars until black dots danced before her vision. By the second night, she stayed in skin, limping, palms numb around walking staff and satchel strap. She did not allow herself to think too far ahead. Not of Cain Bloodmoon, the king she had never seen in person, rumored as old as mountain stone and as warm. Not of court halls where Astrid Blackwood glided like poison in silk. Not of being recognized, mocked, dismissed. She thought of Mara's fevered breaths, of old Rurik's infected leg stump, of pregnant Lisa with no iron tonic left. At the fortress gates, dawn painted the battlements in pewter light. Black banners snapped overhead, each stitched with the blood moon crest. The walls were colossal, smooth stone slick with frost, guarded by wolves in iron-edged cloaks and silver spearheads that could pierce shifter hide. Evangeline stopped 10 paces from the lowered portcullis and lifted both hands away from her body to show she carried no weapon. A gate captain with scarred cheeks looked her up and down. Mud-spattered hem, chapped lips, hollow eyes. "State your name and claim." "Evangeline Nightshade," she said, voice rough. "Healer of Grey Hollow. I request emergency audience to barter service for famine medicine and grain." Recognition flashed in two of the guards, then contempt. "Nightshade?" one muttered. "That Nightshade?" The captain's mouth flattened. "You've got boldness, I'll give you that." "I have dying villagers," she answered. "Boldness is cheaper than coffins." For a long moment he studied her as if weighing nuisance against protocol. Then he jerked his chin toward the inner yard. "You'll be searched. No spell components beyond listed healer stock. No sudden movement near the throne. Speak only when addressed." They took her satchel, counted every herb packet, even checked beneath the leather wraps at her wrists for hidden blades. By the time she was escorted into the great hall, her legs trembled from exhaustion and suppressed pain. The throne hall swallowed sound. High vaulted ceilings, pillars veined dark as old blood. Long council table crowded with nobles in winter furs and polished rings. Scent layered thick. Smoke, steel, ink, wolf. At the far end, upon a stepped dais, sat Cain Bloodmoon. He looked nothing like rumor and exactly like it. Broad-shouldered, motionless, carved from shadow and authority. Black hair threaded with silver at the temples. Hands resting on throne arms as if war itself waited for his permission to breathe. When his gaze cut to her, it felt like stepping bare-skinned into storm water. Astrid Blackwood stood 3 places below the dais, draped in midnight velvet, satisfaction flickering across her face when she recognized Evangeline. Well? So the rot had reached court before her boots did. Evangeline forced her spine straight and knelt because her knees threatened to give anyway. "Your Majesty," she said, each word measured against the roaring in her ears. "Grey Hollow petitions." Pain speared up her side so violently she lost the next sentence. The hall tilted, breath caught. Her scars burned as if fresh wolfsbane had been poured into them. She heard distantly someone say, "She's swaying," and Astrid's soft, almost delighted inhale. Evangeline tried to brace a hand on the stone floor. Her fingers slipped. The world narrowed to torchlight smears and iron taste at the back of her tongue. She hit the ground hard enough to jar her teeth. Bootsteps thundered. Voices overlapped. "Don't touch. Get the royal healer. Could be blood curse." Cool hands turned her gently onto her side. A woman's voice, crisp and calm, cut through the noise. "Quiet, give me space." Silver-ringed fingers pressed to Evangeline's throat, then wrist, then low to her abdomen, where a strange warmth pulsed beneath the agony. One heartbeat. Then, impossible. Another, smaller, rapid as hummingbird wings. The healer went very still. The hall did too. When she spoke, the words dropped like a blade into silence. There are two heartbeats. For one suspended heartbeat, no one moved. Then the throne scraped stone. Cain Blood Moon rose in a single fluid motion that made half the hall flinch. He descended the dais steps without looking at anyone, his attention fixed on Evangeline as if the rest of the court had gone dim around her. "Confirm," he said to the healer. His voice was low, controlled, and edged with something that sounded dangerously like hope. The healer, an older woman with iron-gray braids and silver cuffs, did not remove her fingers from Evangeline's wrist. "I already did, my king." Again. A beat. "Yes, my king." She closed her eyes, listening beneath skin and blood. Evangeline lay half-curled on cold stone, pain and exhaustion blurring everything, but she felt it too now. A strange fluttering thrum deep in her belly, quick and insistent, impossibly alive. Her mind rejected it even as her body reached toward it. No. No, that couldn't. The healer opened her eyes. Two heartbeats. One yours. Her gaze flicked up to Cain, then back to Evangeline with open astonishment. One not. A murmur broke hard across the nobles. Astrid took one step forward, voice silk over steel. With respect, perhaps the healer should test for glamour before declarations are made in open hall. Cain didn't turn toward her. Silence. The single word struck like a slammed door. He crouched beside Evangeline, black wool and leather creasing quietly, and for the first time she saw him this close. The scar at the edge of his jaw, the faint silver in his lashes, the rigid control in every line of him. His scent hit her a second later. Storm rain over warm cedar, winter air over live flame. Her wolf, half drugged by pain for years, slammed awake so hard her bones ached with the surge. He reached out, paused an inch from her face and asked, "May I?" No one had asked her permission in a long time. Evangeline swallowed against a dry throat and gave the smallest nod. His palm cupped her jaw. The world snapped taut. Heat ripped up her spine, bright and violent. Her breath left in a broken gasp as if an invisible hand had closed around her ribs and pulled. Her skin went electric, every nerve lit at once. Somewhere under agony and hunger, her body recognized him with terrifying certainty. A bond thread, silver, brilliant, undeniable, seemed to lash from the center of her chest to his. Not visible in the air, not truly, but felt. A tight, humming line that made distance feel wrong and his nearness feel like gravity. Cain inhaled sharply, the sound almost a hiss between his teeth. His pupils blew wide, then flashed molten gold. His fingers tightened on her jaw, not hurting, anchoring, and a low, involuntary growl rolled through him, ancient and raw, and nothing like a king's polished restraint. Mine. The word shook through her marrow. Panic and relief collided so hard she thought she might be sick. 7 years of being called empty, cursed, useless. 7 years of whispers and exile and hunger. And now this impossible pull, this fierce claiming in front of everyone, from a king rumored untouched by fate for lifetimes. Her wolf pushed forward, not in fear this time but yearning so sharp it hurt. She wanted to lean into him, wanted to run, wanted to claw through her own skin and escape how much she wanted. "No," she whispered hoarsely, though she wasn't sure what she was refusing. Him, the bond, hope itself. "This can't be." His gaze locked on hers. The gold receded by a fraction, enough for thought to return. "It is." Around them, the court erupted again. Questions, protests, shock. Until Cain stood, all at once, king again, and faced the hall. Out. No one moved fast enough. He didn't raise his voice. "All of you. Council dismissed. Any tongue that carries what happened here beyond these walls before I permit it will be removed." Benches scraped. Furs rustled. Nobles bowed and withdrew in a tide of wary silence. Astrid lingered, lips pressed thin, eyes cutting from Evangeline to Cain with simmering calculation. Cain held her stare until she dipped her head and left. Only when the great doors shut did he kneel again. "Can you stand?" Evangeline tried and failed. Pain lanced from old wolfsbane scars to her hips, white hot. She made a strangled sound and hated it. Cain's expression changed, hardness giving way to something colder and far more dangerous. "Who did this to you?" She laughed once, brittle. "That list is long." His jaw flexed. Then he slid one arm beneath her knees, the other behind her shoulders. "I'm carrying you." She stiffened on instinct. He waited. "May I?" The question, again. Always a choice. After a heartbeat, she nodded. He lifted her as if she weighed nothing, steady and careful despite the power in him. Her head ended up near his collar. She could feel his pulse beating fast, not with strain, but with restrained wolf. Every step through the side corridors seemed to tug at that bond thread, easing something in her even as terror gnawed. He brought her to a private infirmary tucked behind carved oak doors, a warm, lamplit room lined with herb cabinets, clean basins, and a curtained bed alcove. The royal healer followed at his shoulder. "Boil water," Cain ordered. "No wolfsbane derivatives, no silver restraints. Nothing enters her blood without her consent." The healer lifted a brow, then nodded. "As you command." He laid Evangeline on the bed with painstaking care. When she tried to push herself upright, he caught her wrist gently. "Stay still." "I need to send a message to Grey Hollow," she said, words rushing now that she could breathe. "They need medicine now. A child has river lung fever and there's no mold left, and the Reeve—" "You came for aid," he said. "You'll have it. Before sunset." She stared at him, searching for mockery. Found none. He looked toward the healer. "Dispatch riders with grain, fever remedies, iron tonic, and clean bandages. Triple winter allotment. They leave within the hour." Evangeline's throat closed unexpectedly. She turned her face away. The healer, whose name was Mara, worked with competent hands and very little chatter. She cleaned the old welts around Evangeline's waist where wolfsbane had burned deep years ago, muttering under her breath at the scar tissue. "Whoever bound you used concentrated extract and left it too long." "I noticed," Evangeline said dryly. Mara snorted, then dabbed salve that cooled like moon water. "You and the pup are stable for now, but stress spikes your pulse and theirs. Rest is not optional. Rest is expensive." Cain, standing near the door like a carved sentinel, answered before Mayera could. "Not here." Once Mayera left to prepare broth, silence stretched between them, taut with the new bond. Evangeline tracked every shift in Cain's breathing without meaning to. He seemed to do the same with her. She pushed herself up against the pillows. "You said mine in front of your court?" "I know." "That has consequences." "Yes." "You don't know me." His gaze dropped briefly to the scars peeking above her torn bodice, then returned to her face. "I know enough to ask, not take." Something in her chest cracked at that. Before she could answer, 2 attendants arrived carrying a copper bath and fresh linens. Evangeline tensed immediately. Strange hands, enclosed space, vulnerability layered over exhaustion. Cain saw it. "Leave us," he told the attendants. They bowed and withdrew. He crossed to a small tray, selected sprigs of lavender, sweet grass, and night-blooming vervain, and held them up. "These are used in the nursery wing for frightened pups after nightmare shift. May I?" "For what?" "To settle your wolf." Evangeline gave a disbelieving huff. "You braid pups?" "One of my sisters had 3. For the first time, a shadow of wryness touched his mouth. "I learned." He moved behind her only after she nodded. His fingers were large, unexpectedly deft as he separated her hair and wove the herbs through loose strands near her nape. The scent unfurled warm and green, quieting the frantic pacing inside her. Every careful touch said the same thing. I could overpower you. I choose not to. When he finished, he stepped back immediately. The bath is ready. I'll wait outside the curtain. You don't have to. I do. He turned, drew the heavy curtain closed around the alcove for privacy, and took position on the other side. Not watching. Guarding. Evangeline stripped with shaking hands and lowered herself into hot water that made her gasp and then almost sob. Dirt, blood, and court dust clouded away. She scrubbed at herself until her skin turned pink, as if she could wash off years of shame with fortress soap. From beyond the curtain came the muted sounds of him moving only when necessary, placing a cup on a table, setting down folded clothing, then stillness. When she emerged in a clean shift, damp-haired and unsteady, she found a tray at the threshold of the curtain. Broth, bread, sliced pear, and a mug of ginger tea. Not brought to her bed. Left where she could choose. Kane remained several paces away, eyes on the hearth. Food, he said. No pressure. She sat and ate in small, greedy bites while he kept his distance. After a while, he asked, May I check your bandage? She nodded around to swallow. He knelt, retied the linen at her waist with precise, gentle fingers, then looked up for permission before his knuckles brushed her skin. Each time, he waited. Each time, she found herself saying yes. By the time Mayra returned and shooed him from the room so Evangeline could sleep, confusion had become something more destabilizing. Trust, thin as first ice. She woke to the scent of roast meat and beeswax and a low hum of voices beyond carved doors. Dusk had fallen. Someone had dressed her in a soft charcoal gown with long sleeves and no tight lacing. The braid in her hair had been redone with fresh lavender. A note rested on her blanket in crisp, heavy script. Council meal. You are invited, not summoned. If you prefer to remain here, say so and a tray will be brought. KB. Invited, not summoned. Evangeline read it twice, then swung her legs from the bed. Her scars still hurt, but the burning had dulled to an ache. She told Mara, I'll go. The council dining chamber glittered with candlelight reflected off polished blackwood. Long table, high-backed chairs, silver goblets, the kingdom's power arranged in furs and jewels and calculating eyes. Conversation dipped when she entered on Kane's arm and then fractured into whispers sharp enough to cut. He seated her at his left while servants poured broth and placed platters of venison and winter roots. She had barely lifted her spoon when a noblewoman across the table leaned toward her companion and murmured, not quite quietly enough. Blood magic can mimic a bond for a fortnight, if one's desperate enough. A man beside her chuckled. Useful trick for a barren exile. Another voice, male, older. How convenient she collapses at court and leaves with a crown heir in her belly. Evangeline kept her gaze on her bowl, face burning. Her wolf bristled, ready to fight or flee. Old reflex said, endure it. Swallow. Survive. Kane set down his fork. The click of metal on porcelain silenced the table faster than a shout. He rose to full height and stepped between Evangeline and the nobles, broad shoulders blocking every line of sight. You. He pointed at the older male lord first. Repeat what you said. Look at me when you do. The man blanched. Your Majesty, I... Repeat it. Silence. Kane turned to the noblewoman. And you. She swallowed so hard Evangeline heard it. I meant no accusation. You made one. His voice remained level, which somehow made it more frightening. Say it again. No one spoke. Candle flames hissed in the quiet. Kane let the silence stretch until discomfort became shame. Then he said, Hear King's law. Any challenge to Evangeline Nightshade's honor, Blood or standing is a direct challenge to the crown. Bring proof in lawful petition or hold your tongues. He looked around the table, one face at a time. If you cannot manage that, you are free to leave hungry. No chairs moved. Cain returned to Evangeline, and in front of all of them, offered his hand. Come here. She stared up at him, pulse racing. My right side, he said. Where my equal sits. A shocked murmur swept the chamber. The seat at the king's right had stood empty for years, reserved for no one and symbolizing everything. Evangeline placed her hand in his. He walked her to the right-hand chair and pulled it out himself. She sat on unsteady legs. He resumed his seat beside her, close enough that warmth from his arm met hers, far enough that she did not feel trapped. Across the table, Astrid Blackwood watched with a smile that never reached her eyes. Evangeline lifted her chin and met that gaze head-on. For the first time in 7 years, she did not feel like prey. Under the table, hidden by linen and shadow, Cain turned his palm upward between them, an offer, not a demand. After one long breath, Evangeline laid her hand in his and let her guard lower by a single, deliberate inch. His fingers curled around hers once, warm, calloused, careful, and then released before anyone could call it weakness. Dinner resumed in brittle silence. Evangeline managed 3 spoonfuls of broth and half a pear, while nobles rediscovered their voices in safer topics. River tolls, patrol routes, winter stores, but she felt the room's attention circling back, again and again, to her belly, to Cain. Across the candlelit table, Astrid lifted her goblet and smiled. Your Majesty, she said lightly, as if discussing weather. A happy shock for the court, certainly. Still, with allied pacts already anxious over famine, perhaps we should provide formal certainty before rumors provide their own. Cain did not look at her. Speak plainly. Astrid set down her wine. Lineage verification. A moon ledger entry from a sworn midwife and bloodline records from Lady Nightshade's former pack. Standard protocol whenever succession might be affected. The words were polished, reasonable, wrapped in law. Evangeline felt Cain go still beside her. My healer already confirmed the pregnancy, he said. A healer confirmed a pregnancy, Astrid replied, voice sympathetic enough to make Evangeline's skin crawl. No one questions Myra's skill, but the court has eyes on stability, not sentiment. Lady Nightshade had a previous mate bond contract, however. Unfortunate its ending. If there is even a whisper that this child predates today's recognition. A few nobles shifted, uncomfortable but listening. Astrid tilted her head, lashes low. I ask only what protects your throne from slander, my king. Cain finally turned to face her fully. You concern yourself deeply with my throne. I concern myself with the realm. Their gazes locked. Evangeline had watched wolves size each other up over carcasses with less tension than that single moment. Then Cain said, Protocol will be handled by my office, not by yours. Astrid's smile thinned. Of course. She lowered her eyes, yielding on the surface. Evangeline didn't miss the victory flicker in them before she looked away. When the meal ended, Cain escorted Evangeline back to the private infirmary himself. The fortress corridors were quieter now, torches turned low for night watch, stone sweating faint cold under winter wind. Their footsteps echoed. At her door, he asked, Are you strong enough to stand a little longer? She nodded, though fatigue tugged at her bones. He gestured to a bench near the hearth. Sit. I want you informed before court carrion starts feeding. That bluntness almost made her smile. Almost. He remained standing as he spoke. Astrid was not improvising. She's been positioning for months. 3 allied alphas lost heirs in border skirmishes this year. Succession nerves are already raw. She's cultivated them with one message, that I need a politically useful queen immediately. Evangeline looked up sharply. She wants to be that queen. Yes. Not jealousy then, strategy. Cain paced once, slow, contained force in each step. Astrid's line is old, wealthy, and tied to grain routes. She hosts, she flatters, she lends coin, she makes herself look indispensable. His mouth hardened, and she spreads rot while doing it. Evangeline thought of Grey Hollow's Reeve reading Astrid's order with smug certainty. The medicine seizures. He nodded. Not just there. 2 other outer settlements reported redistribution errors under her liaison seal. Enough scarcity to raise panic, not enough to trigger revolt before she could offer herself as remedy. Cold slid down Evangeline's back. She starved villages for leverage. Yes. The word landed heavy and final. He crouched before her, forearms braced on his knees, bringing himself level. She will try to discredit you fast, before the bond settles publicly, and before I can restructure command around her influence. She'll seek paper proof, bought witnesses, anything that sounds official. Why are you telling me this like I'm already in the blast radius? His gaze held hers. Because you are. The bond between them thrummed, taut and bright as drawn wire. Fear rose, old and familiar, but now anger moved with it. What are my options? She asked. Stay under my protection and let me crush this. The immediate answer. The king's answer. Evangeline rubbed her thumb against her palm, remembering another hall, another crowd, no one stepping forward. If you silence her by force, she wins the story. They'll say you were enthralled by a fraud and buried truth to keep your bed warm. A shadow of pride flickered across his face. That is exactly what she expects. Then don't give her that. She swallowed. Give me facts. Let me face what she brings. Before he could respond, a knock struck the door. 3 fast raps. Mara entered with a sealed tube in hand and grim eyes. Riders returned from Grey Hollow, she said. Your supplies arrived. The fever child is alive. Relief hit Evangeline so suddenly her vision blurred. Then Mayera added, and every tavern between here and Westgate is already buzzing that you dosed the king with rut hex. Cain exhaled once through his nose, wolf danger curling under the sound. Mara offered the tube to him. From the record office. Urgent. He broke the seal, scanned, and his expression went glacial. What? Evangeline asked. He handed her the parchment. By order of interim lineage review, all records concerning Evangeline Nightshade are to be transferred to court liaison Astrid Blackwood for reconciliation under succession audit. Stamped with the council mark. Dated tonight. Evangeline looked up. Can she do that? Not lawfully, Cain said. Unless someone in records falsified authorization. Mara crossed her arms. Then someone did. Cain turned to the door. Lock down the archive wing. No parchment leaves without my signet. He was halfway out when Evangeline said, Don't just guard the records, guard the midwives. He paused. She mentioned a sworn midwife at dinner before anyone else did, Evangeline said. She already has one. For the first time that evening, something like approval flashed in Myra's eyes. Cain gave a curt nod. Done. When he left, the room felt instantly colder. The next day unraveled by threads. At dawn, 2 scribes arrived requesting routine details of Evangeline's heat cycle history for court ledgers. Mara sent them away with language that blistered paint. Mid-morning, a kitchen servant accidentally spilled nettle tea near Evangeline's cup. Mara smelled moonseed in it before it touched her lips. By noon, fortress guards intercepted a messenger carrying forged correspondence claiming Evangeline had sought fertility charm work from hedge witches along East Ridge. Every hour, another move. Every hour, another quiet attempt to make lies look procedural. Cain barely left her side except to issue orders. Yet even wrapped in royal protection, Evangeline felt the pressure tightening. Whispers in corridors, servants going silent when she passed, the sensation of being measured for a fall. And threaded through all of it, impossible and inconvenient, the bond. When Cain entered a room, her wolf lifted its head. When he stepped out, an ache pulled low in her ribs, not pain exactly, but wrongness. It frightened her how quickly her body recognized him, how much she wanted to trust that recognition. By afternoon, wind battered sleet against the infirmary windows in hard diagonal lines. Evangeline stood at a work table grinding dried lungwort because stillness made her think too much. Her scars burned with each circle of the pestle. Cain came in, removed his gloves, and watched her for a long beat. "You're shaking." "I'm working." "You're bleeding." She glanced down. The rough stone had split skin at the base of her thumb. Bright blood smeared the mortar rim. He stepped closer, then stopped at arm's length. "May I?" She held out her hand. He cleaned the cut with warm water and wrapped it in a strip of linen, movements precise. His knuckles brushed her pulse and her breath caught at the quiet intimacy of it. "I don't like waiting for the next strike," she admitted, voice low. "I know." "No," she said, surprising herself with the sharpness. "You don't. You're feared. Obeyed. When they hate you, they do it from a distance. They hated me up close." Her throat tightened. "They smiled while they dragged me." His jaw set, but he didn't interrupt. She stared at his hands, at the scar crossing his right thumb. "I keep expecting to wake up and find this was another cruelty, another crowd, another performance." Cain tied off the bandage, then deliberately released her hand. "Look at me." She did. "If this were performance," he said, "you would already be marked and installed and paraded. You are none of those things because your will comes first." The words hit harder than reassurance should have. A messenger knocked and entered without meeting Evangeline's eyes, delivering a stack of sealed petitions to Cain. He skimmed the first and swore softly. "Say it," Evangeline said. 5 minor houses demanding immediate purity review." He tossed it down. "And 3 alpha signatures attached in support." Her stomach dropped. 3? Enough to force council hearing under old clan law. There it was. The blade finally visible. Evangeline straightened, hand drifting unconsciously to her abdomen. "When?" "Tonight, if they press emergency standing." "Will they?" He met her gaze. "Astrid will make sure they do." That evening, before the hearing bell, Cain took Evangeline to the moon balcony above the East Keep. Snow had stopped. Clouds thinned in torn strips, revealing a swollen moon and a sky sharp with stars. The stone balustrade was rimed white. 2 wolf sentries stood far enough away to grant privacy without abandoning guard. For a while they said nothing. Their breath smoked silver in the cold. Evangeline leaned on the railing, wincing when scar tissue pulled. "When I was cast out," she said quietly, "I told myself I survived because I was strong." Cain waited. She laughed without humor. "Truth? I survived because dying would have proved them right." He turned toward her, forearms on stone. "I was born to a court that measured love in treaties," he said. "My father took 3 political mates, lost 2 in wars started by the alliances those bonds created, and spent the rest of his reign trusting no one." His eyes stayed on the moon. "I swore I would never take a mate for convenience. Better no bond than a false one." Evangeline studied his profile. The old grief banked deep there. "And now?" "Now I felt the thread the second I touched you." He looked at her then, wolf gold flickering under dark lashes. "And I am trying very hard not to let wanting become another kind of force." The honesty undid something in her. She slid her hand across the frost-cold stone between them, palm up. He looked at it, then at her. "Your choice?" "My choice." He placed his hand over hers, warm despite the air, and the bond eased into a steady hum that made her shoulders drop for the first time all day. Evangeline swallowed. "I'm afraid of needing this." Need is not weakness. It is when someone can weaponize it. His thumb stroked once over her knuckles. Then we make sure no one can. She drew a shaky breath. If tonight goes badly, it won't. If it does, she pressed, you send medicine to Grey Hollow anyway, no matter what they call me. A muscle jumped in his cheek. Done. He hesitated, then asked, May I? She knew what he meant without asking. Nodded. His hand moved to her lower belly, broad and reverent, barely any pressure. They both went still, listening with senses deeper than ears. For a second, nothing. Then, there. Rapid, tiny flutter against his palm. Kane's eyes closed. When he opened them, there was naked wonder there, and fury, and something perilously close to devotion. Evangeline felt tears sting and blinked them back. 5 minutes, she whispered. It took Mara 5 minutes to find what 7 years of shame said didn't exist. Kane bent, resting his forehead briefly against hers. Then we spend the rest of our lives making liars choke on it. A horn sounded below. 3 long notes. Council summons. The moment shattered. The great hall was fuller than the night before. Not just nobles now. Delegates from allied pacts, record keepers, enforcers lining the walls. Word had spread fast and vicious. The air smelled of wet wool, ink, anticipation. Kane took the throne. Evangeline stood at the dais's lower right, not seated but not hidden. Mara remained at her shoulder like an iron post. Astrid Blackwood stepped into the center circle in formal black trimmed with silver, every inch the grieving servant of the realm. By petition of 5 houses and 3 allied alphas, she announced, projecting perfectly. I request emergency succession hearing regarding Evangeline Nightshade, whose sudden pregnancy and claimed bond to the crown raise unresolved questions of lineage, legitimacy, and possible magical coercion. Murmurs rose. Kane lifted 2 fingers. Silence dropped. Present evidence, he said. Astrid gestured. A woman in midwife blue was escorted forward, pale and trembling but determined. Marta Voss, sworn midwife of Ashen Ridge, Astrid said. State your testimony. The midwife curtsied. I attended Lady Nightshade before her wedding 7 years ago. At the request of her former mate's house, I recorded her as unlikely to conceive due to blood weakness. Evangeline stared. She had never seen this woman before in her life. Astrid continued smoothly. Further, new Moon Ledger entries indicate Lady Nightshade sought unauthorized fertility intervention from hedge practitioners within the past year. 2 rogues were brought in next, lean men with prison brands at the wrist. They bowed too quickly, eyes sliding toward Astrid before speaking. She paid us for moonroot and redthorn charms, one said, asked for rights to catch any seed possible. Lies stacked on lies, each delivered under oath posture. Mara hissed under her breath. Moonroot in pregnancy would kill a fetus in a day. Astrid turned then, tragic concern painted across her face. No one delights in this, but if Lady Nightshade carries a child conceived under prior bond, or through manipulative craft, the crown is vulnerable to blackmail. The law is clear. A trial of purity, before the clans will settle truth without blood feud. Kane rose slowly. Power rolled through the hall like thunder pressure. This testimony reeks of purchase, he said. Your rogues can't keep their stories straight. Your midwife's record bears a seal that did not exist 7 years ago. Sit down, Astrid. A flicker of irritation crossed her features. Gone instantly. She bowed her head. Then let Moon Truth clear her, if she is innocent. She lifted a parchment high. Here are the signatures you requested proof of, Your Majesty. 3 alphas invoking ancient claim right. A herald took it, checked marks, and paled before handing it to Kane. Real signatures, legally binding. Kane crushed the edge of the parchment in his fist. Convenient. Lawful. Astrid corrected softly. The herald, voice shaking, read from statute. Under Old Clan Accord, when succession legitimacy is contested by 3 allied alpha houses, accused may accept trial of purity or forfeit claim, rank, and court protection pending exile review. The words struck like stones. Forfeit rank. Court protection. Exile. Evangeline heard the hall buzz to life around her, distant and distorted. This was the trap. Force Cain to overrule law and look tyrant, or let law strip her bare in public again. Astrid turned to Evangeline with practiced pity. Lady Nightshade, for the realm's peace, will you submit? Cain's voice cracked like a whip. She answers nothing tonight. But the herald kept reading, bound to procedure. Emergency standing granted by petition. Trial must commence before next moonrise if accused remains within Crown Keep. Tonight. Mara grabbed Evangeline's elbow as her knees threatened to fold. Cain stepped down from the dais, putting his body between her and the hall, between her and every hungry gaze. This hearing is adjourned until dawn, he snarled. Astrid's smile sharpened. You can delay hours, my king, not law. The chamber erupted, shouts, arguments, wolves growling under skin. At the center of it, Evangeline pressed a hand to her belly and felt the tiny, frantic flutter inside her answer the chaos with terrified speed. Moonrise was in hours, and unless she chose to stand in a blood circle built by her enemies, the crown itself would be forced to cast her out again. Moonrise came hard and bright, washing the fortress courtyard in silver that made every blade and eye look sharpened. The Trial of Purity circle had been carved into black stone older than the keep itself, 3 concentric rings, 12 clan marks, a moon pool at the center reflecting the sky like liquid glass. Torches hissed in iron braziers. Snowmelt steamed where too many bodies crowded the edges. Nobles in jeweled furs, allied alphas in war cloaks, fortress guards shoulder to shoulder. Evangeline stood at the circle's lip with Mara wrapping fresh linen around her palm. You still have a choice, Cain said quietly at her side. His face was a storm held behind bone. I can end this by decree. She looked up at him. And tomorrow they'll say you buried truth for your barren whore. His nostrils flared at the word. She touched his wrist. I won't live under that story again. Not mine, not our child's. Our children, Mayra muttered, checking Evangeline's pulse. At Evangeline's startled glance, the healer snorted. 2 heartbeats, remember? One's yours, one's not. Keep breathing and stop trying to faint out of stubbornness. A strangled laugh escaped Evangeline before fear swallowed it again. Across the courtyard, Astrid Blackwood glided to her appointed place in tribunal black, hair braided with moon-silver chains, expression composed into sorrowful duty. Behind her stood Marta Voss, the bribed midwife, sweating despite the cold, and the 2 rogue witnesses in shackles. The herald struck a staff to stone. By ancient accord, truth shall be called under moon witness. Accuser and accused, enter. Cain's hand brushed Evangeline's lower back, not pushing, just there. I'm with you. Beside me, she whispered. His eyes held hers, always. She stepped into the first ring. Old magic stirred underfoot like cold water around ankles. Astrid entered opposite her. State accusation, the herald ordered. Astrid inclined her head. Evangeline Nightshade carries unlawful issue and has used manipulative craft to compromise crown judgment. Murmurs rolled outward. The old shame word, Barren, flickered in the crowd like sparks looking for dry grass. State defense, the herald said. Evangeline lifted her chin. I carry no lie. I ask full truth right, including blood red and spellwork audit. A ripple of surprise. Full rights were dangerous, hard to fake, harder to survive. Cain shifted forward, but Evangeline did not look at him. If she looked, she might break. The first oath bowl was brought. moon water, salt, and ash. Astrid and Evangeline each dipped fingers and touched tongue. The water should curdle black if either opened with deliberate lie. It stayed clear. Astrid smiled faintly as if to say, "See?" Second came witness testimony. Marta Voss repeated her claim with shaking voice. Pre-wedding examination, blood weakness, poor prognosis. One rogue repeated the hedge witch story. The other embellished, adding that Evangeline had begged for any seed, any sire. Evangeline forced herself not to react. Then the blood reader, a white-haired alpha from North Fang, opened a ledger and frowned. These moon ledger seals are recent pressings on old parchment, ink age mismatched. He looked up sharply. Who prepared these records? Astrid answered before anyone else could. Court Reconciliation Office. Human error, perhaps. The alpha's mouth thinned. Perhaps. The herald raised both hands. Final phase. Blood truth. Myra stepped forward with a silver knife and looked directly at Evangeline. If there is hostile spellwork embedded in tissue, this will wake it. Evangeline nodded. The knife kissed her forearm, shallow and sharp. Blood welled dark red, steaming in cold air. As drops struck the stone, the moon circle lines ignited pale blue. Then, suddenly, one segment near her old rejection scar flared pitch black. Pain detonated. Evangeline gasped and folded, one knee slamming stone. It felt like molten hooks under her skin, dragging from scar to womb. Her wolf screamed inside her skull. "Stop the right!" someone shouted. Astrid's voice cut through, alarm perfectly performed. "You see? Corruption." But Mara had gone deadly still, eyes fixed on the black flare. "That is not self-cast," she snapped. "That's a bound suppression mark." Evangeline's breath came ragged. Through agony she saw it. Not with eyes, but healer sense. A rune buried under years of scar tissue, curled like a dead centipede around old wolfsbane damage. Womb sleep poison, dormant, hidden, waiting. Memory crashed over her. The wedding night cup Astrid herself had pressed into her hands, for nerves, sweet with spiced wine. Her vision tunneled. Somewhere beyond, Cain growled, "End it now." If he ended it now, they would call her tainted forever. Evangeline bared her teeth and pushed upright. "Do not," Mara warned under her breath, hearing what she intended. Unravel command backlash could stop both heartbeats. "I know. You could lose." "I know." Evangeline looked at Cain then, because he deserved the choice too. His face had gone white under bronze skin. "Eva." "My will," she said hoarsely. "Not theirs." Before anyone could grab her, she snatched Mara's silver knife, sliced her own palm deep, and smeared blood directly across the black-lit segment over her scar. The circle screamed. Magic snapped up her arm like lightning through marrow. Evangeline threw her head back and spoke the forbidden healer's command, the one taught only in whispers for undoing hostile craft. "By blood that bears life, by moon that names truth. I sever what was bound against my will, unmake, unmask, return to sender." The black rune tore free from her skin in a burst of smoke and sparks. She thought her heart had stopped. For one eternal second the world went silent. No wind, no crowd, no breath. Then her own pulse slammed back. Under it came the smaller, rapid beat, bright as a bird's wing. Evangeline stayed on her feet. Black smoke twisted over the moon pool and spread across its mirrored surface. Symbols surfaced in oily light. A contracted sigil, inked in blood oath geometry. Not Evangeline's. Astrid Blackwood's housemark blazed in the center. The courtyard erupted. She contracted poison craft against succession blood. By the moon. Marta Voss dropped to her knees so hard her teeth clicked. "Mercy," she sobbed. "Mercy, please. I only altered records, I swear. I never dosed her. I only hid it after. Lady Blackwood paid me in crown jewels and promised my son's positions if I swore she was barren. Astrid whirled on her, mask cracking. Shut up! The midwife curled over herself. She said no one would know. She said the mark would sleep forever, and if the girl conceived it would fail before quickening. Cain took one step toward Astrid, murder plain in every line. Evangeline lifted a bloody hand. Stop! His wolf flashed in his eyes. She tried to kill you. And our child, Evangeline said, voice shaking but clear. She answers to me first. She turned to the herald, to the alphas, to the circle still humming around her blood. I invoke blood right challenge. A stunned pause. Under old law, blood right challenge let the directly wronged demand truth from accuser under binding consequence. Rare, irrevocable. Astrid laughed once, too high. You're in no position. I present evidence, Evangeline said, lifting the torn black rune, still smoking in her palm. Hostile spellwork extracted from my body under moon witness. Source sigil reflected and confirmed. She stepped toward Astrid, one ring at a time. Pain screamed through her scar, but she did not stop. I bind Astrid Blackwood to truth under wolf silence. Lie, and your wolf goes mute forever. Now fear finally showed in Astrid's eyes. You can't, she hissed. You're a cast-out healer. Evangeline met her gaze. Not tonight. The herald looked to the gathered alphas. Do you recognize blood right standing? One by one, voices answered. Recognized. 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 Unanimous. Mara tossed Evangeline a strip of red binding cloth. Evangeline wrapped it around the broken rune and pointed at Astrid. Speak. Did you commission womb sleep poison against me on my wedding night? Astrid's lips pressed white. No. The red cloth ignited. Astrid screamed and clutched her throat, dropping to one knee as her wolf howled soundlessly behind her eyes. Gasps tore through the crowd. Truth, Evangeline said, unflinching. Again. Astrid shook, nails clawing stone. Yes, she spat. Yes, I did. Did you bribe witnesses to forge records and accuse me of carrying another male's child? Yes. Did you divert grain and medicine from outer villages to create unrest? Astrid's face twisted. Yes, damn you. Every confession rang through the courtyard like bells. Evangeline took one final step until they were almost nose to nose. Why? Astrid's laugh came cracked and feral. Because I was born for that throne. You were born to be cast out. Silence dropped, brittle as ice. Evangeline's voice was quiet enough that everyone leaned to hear. No, you chose treachery, and tonight, your choices choose you back. She turned to the Alpha line. I request sentence. North Fang's white-haired Alpha raised his staff. By unanimous vote of clan heads present, Astrid Blackwood is stripped of title, lands, and court rank. For attempted heir killing by covert curse, witness subornation, and famine sabotage, her wolf rights are severed. She is exiled beyond border law and Ironbane chains. Astrid lunged, feral desperation overriding sense, claws half-shifted. Cain moved, but Evangeline was faster. She slammed her bloodied palm to Astrid's sternum and barked, Kneel! The blood-right cloth flared. Astrid crumpled, choking, pinned by her own broken oath. Guards rushed in, shackles ringing. Ironbane cuffs snapped over Astrid's wrists, then throat collar. Each click final. She fought until one guard twisted her arms and forced her upright. As they dragged her toward the gate, crowd parting like a wound, Astrid craned her neck and spat toward Evangeline's feet. This isn't over. Evangeline wiped the spit away with her boot. It is for you. The fortress gate groaned open. Snow wind knifed in. Astrid Blackwood, once court's bright darling, was marched through in chains while every watching Alpha bore witness. No one looked away. After the tribunal, adrenaline left Evangeline all at once. By the time she reached the East Tower balcony, guided by Kane's hand at her elbow, she was shaking hard enough her teeth clicked. The moon rode high above fresh snow. The keep below buzzed with distant orders. Arrests, audits, riders dispatched. Kane shut the balcony doors behind them and set his cloak around her shoulders. For a long moment he only held her, forehead to temple, breathing her in as if proving she was still here. "You scared me," he murmured. "You looked ready to tear out half the council's throats." "Also true." She huffed a weak laugh, then winced and pressed her palm to her scar. He caught her wrist gently. "May I check?" She nodded. He lifted her shift hem just enough to inspect the angry skin where the rune had torn free. Black veins had receded, leaving raw crimson lines instead of deadened gray. "It's gone," Mara had said below, astonished. "The suppression's gone." Now Kane brushed one careful fingertip near the edge, reverent and furious. 7 years. 7 years, Evangeline echoed. He looked up, something solemn settling over him. "There is one thing I will not leave to rumor or law or fear." Her pulse jumped. He went down on one knee. Not king over subject, wolf before mate. "Evangeline Nightshade," he said, voice roughened to truth. "Your will, not duty?" Wind rattled the balcony rail. Somewhere far below, wolves called status changes into the night. Evangeline put both hands on his face and felt him lean into the touch like a man starved. "Yes," she whispered. Louder. "Yes, my will." Kane stood, reached for the clasp at his throat, and pulled his collar open, baring the strong line where neck met shoulder. "I offer first," he said. The gesture, vulnerable, trusting, absolute, hit her harder than any claim. He stepped close enough that their bodies lined up, chest to chest, breath mingling in white clouds. "Last chance," he said, eyes locked on hers. "We can wait." "No." Her wolf surged, wild and sure. "Mine." A dark, stunned hunger flashed across his face at hearing it from her. He cupped the back of her neck, thumb stroking once where her pulse fluttered. "Yours," he answered. Then he bent his head. His teeth found the junction of her neck and shoulder. Pressure first, a warning, one suspended second for refusal. She made a sound low in her throat and held still. His bite drove in deep. Pain flared bright, sharp, holy, and then cracked open into heat that flooded every nerve. It was fire and rain at once, lightning down her spine, pleasure braided through ache so tightly she couldn't tell where one ended. Power poured through the bond thread in a rushing wave. Storm scent, cedar warmth, iron control, fierce protectiveness, and beneath it all a tenderness so vast it made her knees buckle. He caught her before she fell, mouth still at her throat as he sealed the mark with his tongue, and a growled, breathless, "Mine." Evangeline clung to his shoulders, nails digging through wool. Inside her, her wolf threw back its head and howled recognition. And from low in her belly came that quick, steady flutter. Answering. Kane lifted his head, eyes molten gold, lips reddened with her blood. "Mate," he whispered like a vow and prayer. Evangeline's turn. She slid her hands to his jaw, drew him down, and kissed him once. Hard, tasting salt and iron and moon-cold air. "Hold still," she breathed, a crooked smile, feral and trusting. "Always for you." She turned his offered throat and bit. His muscles locked under her hands, a guttural sound torn from him as her teeth sank in. She felt the moment skin gave, felt his pulse surge against her tongue, felt his power answer hers not by crushing but by opening. Walls dropping, heat flooding, centuries of loneliness cracking like old ice. Pain flashed through her jaw and transformed into molten pleasure that rolled through her core, through scar and bone and blood. The bond snapped from taut wire into braided rope, thick and luminous, anchoring chest to chest, wolf to wolf, heart to heart. Yours, he rasped against her hair, shaking. Mine, she answered. He gathered her fully against him, both arms wrapped tight but never trapping, and she felt it then with startling clarity. 3 rhythms in the bond space, not 2. Her own, his, and the small rapid beat, no longer frantic, steady, bright, nested between theirs. Evangeline laughed into his shoulder, half sob, half wonder. Cain pressed a kiss to her marked throat, then her brow. No one casts you out again. She leaned back enough to meet his eyes, still glowing. Then stand with me, not over me. He touched his forehead to hers. With you. In front when needed. Behind when asked. Beside. Always. Good, she said, because if she said more she would cry. Below them, as if the keep itself felt the bond settle, a chorus of wolves rose, long, fierce, triumphant. Cain's smile finally broke, real and young and devastating. Hear that? She smiled back, breathless. They heard. He kissed her once more, gentler this time, and the thread between them hummed low and content as winter stars burned above. Morning brought no mercy to bureaucracy, but for once, bureaucracy served truth. In the throne hall, Cain sat crowned and marked, his fresh mate bite visible above his collar. Evangeline stood at his right in deep blue, her own mark unhidden. Mara hovered nearby with a healer's glare that kept over-eager courtiers from crowding. The 3 alphas who had signed Astrid's petition knelt in formal apology. North Fang spoke first. We were misled by forged records and controlled supply reports. We submit fines in grain and guard rotations to the outer villages harmed. Cain looked to Evangeline. She stepped forward. Grain goes first to Grey Hollow, Birch Run, and South Fen. Medicine convoys travel with neutral healers from each allied pack, not court liaisons. I want signed receipt logs at every handoff. The alphas bowed. Done. A scribe unrolled fresh vellum. Cain stood to read the decree himself. By crown authority and clan witness, succession law is hereby reformed. Noble birth claims cannot override confirmed mate bond rights. No candidate may petition political mating while a true bond stands. Any fertility accusation against bonded or unbonded wolves requires licensed truth magic confirmation before public record. False filing is treason. The words cracked through old power structures like an axe through rotten wood. A few nobles looked ill. Good. Cain extended the decree to Evangeline. Cosign? She took the quill, felt every eye in the chamber on her hand, and signed in steady strokes. Evangeline Nightshade, High Luna, Royal Healer. The title rang out as herald proclamation. Not charity, not rumor. Law. After, in the lower courtyard, wagons were loaded under her direct supervision. Grain sacks stamped with the crown and her moonleaf seal, crates of fever remedies, iron tonic, clean linen, dried meat. She stopped one cart driver with a lift of her hand. Who signed your manifest? He swallowed. Reeve Tolland of Grey Hollow, my lady. The same Reeve who seized village medicine under Astrid's false order? Yes. Replace him, Evangeline said to the captain beside her. Temporary steward from the Healers Guild until village vote. No more private redistribution. The captain thumped fist to chest. At once, High Luna. By dusk, she stood in a once empty west wing now buzzing with carpenters and apprentices. Above the doorway, fresh carved letters read, Nightshade Sanctuary, for rejected wolves, cursed mothers, and unclaimed pups. Mara handed her a box of keys. You realize this place will overflow by spring. Then we build another floor. A shy voice piped from the corridor. Healer Eva? Little Mara Whitethorn, cheeks pink with recovery, clutched her grandmother's hand and a bundle of dried lavender. Evangeline knelt despite Cain's immediate protective frown. Mara held out the lavender. Gran said queens get flowers. Evangeline took it carefully, throat thick. Best tribute I've had all day. Mara glanced at her marked neck. Does it hurt? Sometimes, Evangeline said honestly. Mostly it reminds me I'm not alone. Mara considered that, then nodded solemnly as children do when filing away truths for later. Winter solstice laid the kingdom in crystal. On the same east balcony where blood and vows had sealed, snow drifted in soft spirals. 2 wolves stood at the rail. Cain's massive black form, silver-flecked at the shoulders, and Evangeline's lean gray pressed flank to flank. Below, the fortress courtyards glowed with festival fires, and beyond the walls, torch lines marked relief caravans moving out toward villages that would eat through deep winter. They shifted back to skin as the solstice bell sounded. Cain wrapped a blanket around her and settled behind her on the stone bench, one arm around her waist. His palm spread over the curve of her belly where life moved in quick, insistent flutters. There, he murmured when a kick answered. Strong. Evangeline laced her fingers through his. Told you. He kissed the mark at her throat, then rested his chin on her shoulder. No crown between them up here, no court. Just breath, heartbeat, moonlight. From the yard below came a call and response howl, packs answering packs, not in challenge, but in recognition. Evangeline watched the soundless white of falling snow and thought of altar stones, border mud, 7 years of swallowing shame. Thought of black smoke tearing free, of chains closing on the woman who had built her pain like a staircase. She turned her head and caught Cain's gaze. Do you regret it? She asked softly. Any of it? He looked genuinely offended. I regret only that I found you after they hurt you. She smiled, small and fierce. You found me when I was ready to stand. True. His thumb stroked the inside of her wrist where her pulse beat strong. And you made a kingdom relearn truth. Below, a messenger crossed the yard carrying tablets stamped with her moonleaf seal. New clinic openings, convoy routes, sanctuary admissions, work unfinished, work worth doing. Evangeline leaned back into Cain's chest and let herself be held. Once, they had called her Barren and cast her beyond the stones. Now her mate's hand was warm over their child, her mark burned bright at her throat, and a realm that had watched her rise was learning her name all over again, not as warning, but as promise.